Ladies and gentlemen, I had different plans for tonight's show, but then I was reading John and Patsy Ramsey's The Death of Innocence for our JonBenet Ramsey series, and I realized that this book is chock full of lies.
Are you shocked?
I'm not shocked at all. See, I've been saying to you since it started seeming like it was more likely that it was John and Patsy Ramsey, in my opinion. Since it seemed like that was more likely, I kept saying to you, I think that the truth is going to come out in their words.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be from the evidence, because just like we saw with Sebastian Rogers, it's pretty easy to distract the police. You know, like they have a set of procedures they have to work through. If you can circumvent it, then you win. It doesn't matter if you just have really good lawyers like the Ramseys did, because the Ramsey lawyers managed to get their hands on every single piece of evidence the police had. Really? Not from the police. So the police department's there, and they're very confused about where all of this is coming from. It turns out down the line, through one of Thomas's informants, that it's D.A. Hunter who's leaking everything and has been leaking everything for basically 20 years. So if you got that much of an apparatus on your side, it's kind of easy to get away with this kind of thing. Not necessarily easy, but it's possible. Sebastian Rogers, again, as I've said, the Sheriff's Department gave me a weird answer when I asked if Chris Proudfoot had friends in the Sheriff's Department, and he told me he's not friends with the sheriff. That wasn't the question I asked. I sent a follow-up email, and it was never answered. And then with the boy in the box, with that one, it was so long ago, and this baby was illegally adopted. He was purchased. You have fingerprinting, but literally nothing else. At that time in history, it was a lot easier to get away with. But where it starts to come out is the stories from the family. It was Martha in the boy in the box's case. She basically deliberately ratted out her parents. With Sebastian Rogers, as you look more and more, well, Nina comes forward, and she's got a whole bunch of stories. And then you look through Chris and Katie's statements, and none of them line up. I shouldn't say none, but they don't make a ton of sense. And then as I'm going through this, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, it's really weird that the morning of the disappearance, the story, there were these several contradictory stories. First, Patsy saw the note, and then she ran up to get, first Patsy saw JonBenet wasn't there, then saw the note, then ran up to get John. Then, when she talked to Arndt, it was, she went downstairs, saw the note, went to look in on JonBenet, and then she, screamed for her husband. So that was one contradiction within a few hours. Maybe, look at that one. All right, sure. Maybe it's just that it was the morning of something horrible that had happened and she was genuinely just kind of frazzled. But then there's other changes. So when John first tells police what happened the night before, he says that he brought both children inside. They were both awake. He read to them. He tucked them into bed. And then he and Patsy went to bed. Later on, the story changes and it's Patsy who tucked JonBenet into bed. I think it's very possible both of them tucked JonBenet into bed that night for different reasons. Because she did have a bedwetting problem. Now, what causes bedwetting problems? A number of things, but the abuse is among them. But so as I'm, thinking about that, I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I have been pretty one-sided. I haven't been using the Ramseys book because I don't typically take the word of the suspects at face value when I'm researching these things. But I was like, you know what? Just to be fair, let's see what they say. And it did not take long, Aiden. It did not take long. I only did one chapter so far. And this was literally in the last 10 minutes. You've watched me do this.
Just out of curiosity, how far into the first chapter did you find the first contradiction or something that was just out of line in general from the research that you've done?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences in. 7 sentences in, Aiden. Because Patsy, and this in my opinion is her trying to explain why, she was just getting on a plane, she said they always do that. She's the suspect. I don't care what she says, unless it contradicts something else. So as I'm going through here, what do I find? All right, so this is her waking up. She says, I hear John turning on the water in his bathroom and realize that it is still dark. We go down a little bit. Nothing super important in the first 6 sentences. Take a shower, get dressed, get going. I swing out of bed and abruptly remember that my shower is still broken. Don't need one this morning, I think to myself. Just put my clothes on and, of course, my makeup. Now, ignoring the fact that I don't know why you'd put on a full face of makeup to go on a plane ride to Michigan, or Minnesota, sorry. They're coming for us. think that's a fire truck.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the only
let it
thing I
pass.
can think of is essentially if you're assuming that you're going to be going somewhere like lunch or something directly after the flight
Maybe.
and not like to
Sure.
somewhere that you're going to
Yeah,
stay.
I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. I just think it's weird.
Yeah.
But, here's what I think is especially weird. Aiden, can you do the thing where you put what's on your screen on that screen? Quickly
Yes.
for me? Because I want to really drill down on this whole thing. John turning on the water could mean a number of things. John could be shaving. John could be showering. John could be washing his face. John could be fixing his hair. There are a number of possibilities as to what John could be doing in the bathroom, right? That involve turning the water on. Aiden, if you are in a rush, say that it is 5:45 a.m., and you have to be at the airport that is 15 minutes away in 45 minutes. How long is your shower?
If I'm showering, it's very short.
Right. So assuming John was even showering, 2 to 5 minutes max, right?
I think so,
Right, of course.
especially with a man with short hair.
Yeah, of course. And he had short hair. Go ahead and put the Ramsey's third floor plan up on the screen for me.
It is about.
It is reloading. There we go.
there.
That was the first floor. Can you pull up the third floor?
Yep.
Damn, this is what happens when you order Jamie from Wish. So, Aiden, what do you notice about that floor plan right there? Specifically about the number of bathrooms.
That there are two of them.
There are 2 of them, Aiden. So, if you are husband and wife and have been for, I believe at this point, it was nearly 20 years, are you going to balk at, showering in the same room as your spouse? Or even at the same time?
No.
Probably not, no.
No.
So, why is it a problem that her shower doesn't work if there is yet another shower? Aiden, can you switch it to the second floor plan for me? How many bathrooms are on that floor?
1, 2, 3 looks like.
Mm-hmm. And is one of them not in Melinda's room?
Yes. There's actually 2 of them that seem not to be.
Yep. So do you know? One of them is JonBenet's.
Yes, but in a pinch.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's at least 2 bathrooms here. I think one of them's also Burke's, though. But point is, Melinda. Where's Melinda?
Seems to be on the northwest.
No, I mean December 26th, 1996. Where's Melinda?
Oh, not in this house.
Not in Boulder at all. So why is it that Patsy can't take a shower because her shower, one of like 6 on the upper 2 floors, isn't working?
Great question.
There is no reason. There is absolutely 0 reason she could not shower if she wanted to. In my opinion, that is an explanation meant to say, this is why I was already dressed just 11 minutes after I woke up.
But Madison, we're back to
It also explains why she still has a full face of makeup.
But you have to understand that when you're a woman and you have so many different things that you need to do in the shower, it's very difficult to move all of those things from one shower to another. Whoop.
Yeah, it is pretty difficult. You have to grab a few bottles and carry them. Really hard.
Yeah, extremely difficult.
Very difficult thing to do. Amanda absolutely never decides to shower in one bathroom instead of the other in our apartment.
But what if you're in a pinch?
No, I mean, she does. It happens frequently.
No. But I mean, like, if you're in a pinch that morning.
I mean, I guess it would be really hard to walk 30 feet. But you might be thinking, Aiden, come on, you're being so nitpicky here. Ready? All right, well, what's this, I wonder? I turn around, this is as she's going down the spiral staircase, by the way, which really quickly, minutes later, I gotta be at the airport by 6:30, going to push us to get everyone going because time's so short, blah, 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 blah. We're going to be meeting up with Melinda's fiance, Stuart, so that's why I want to make a good impression. This is why she's got her makeup on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So minutes later, I hurry down the back stairs from our bedroom to the second floor where the children's bedrooms are located. I stop at the top of the spiral stairs that lead down to the first floor, and I turn to the laundry area. Need to get a few things together for the trip. I think to myself, not much since we've already got clothes and most necessary items back at the house in Charlevoix. I quickly shove some of the laundry into a plastic sack so that it will go on the plane as is. John likes us to pack in soft-sided bags because it makes loading the plane easier. I don't even want to address that one because what are you talking about?
No, I believe.
Plastic bags?
No.
They're rich. This is a woman who
More specifically, soft bags.
Okay, yes, but plastic? A plastic garbage sack for a woman who is all about performance. I'm not saying it's a smoking gun. I'm just trying to point out a few little inconsistencies here because the bigger one's coming up. So here we go. I hurry down the spiral staircase to the bottom floor and stop. And this is when she says she finds something on the floor. Now, keep in mind the thing she said when they first questioned her. Closest to the events. What was it?
About what she found or when she found it?
Mm-hmm.
It was the note going down the stairs, correct?
It was wake up, check on JonBenet, go downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same story here. That one is accurate, which means that there's deliberate misdirections going on.
So to clarify really quickly, because this one, did she mention JonBenet in this one?
No.
So that's my point. So this.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is the second story. This is my bad. Yeah, this is the second story. So she went with the latter story. That's what I was thinking. I was confusing myself as I was talking. I was like, wait a minute, I said something wrong here, and now I got to find a way to bring it back. And then I didn't. So I'm glad you're here. If you can't tell, I've had a lot of caffeine today.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the version where this is the version she gave Arndt.
Yeah.
Not the version she gave French. So now I want to keep in mind that Arndt is the one that kind of got pushed to the outside by the rest of the police department on this one.
Also clarifying that the story she gave French was the story she gave before she gave Arndt.
So she gives Officer French the story first. She tells Officer French, I came down, I checked on JonBenet, I found the note, I went back up. She tells Arndt, I came down, I found the note, I checked on JonBenet, right? Arndt's the one that then gets kind of presented as being the crazy one for the entire rest of the case. But anyway, here we go. So she finds the 3 pages at the bottom, right? What's this, I wonder? I turn around to look at 3 pieces of paper on a step near the bottom. I bend over. Must be a note from the cleaning lady, Linda, I think. Probably reminding me she needs to borrow $2,500. I must leave a check on the kitchen counter before we leave. You come downstairs at 5:45 in the morning, and the very first thing you think of, keep in mind, Linda had not been in the house the previous evening. Linda had not been in the house between them getting home from the party and them going to sleep and waking up the next morning.
And important note to clarify, this is the staircase they use to get up and down from their bedroom, right?
No, this is the staircase at the back of the house. This is the spiral staircase. The staircase that goes directly up to the bedroom. And again, that's going to be a confusing thing here because she doesn't specify staircases all that much. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the spiral staircase is where the note's found, right? That's the back of the house.
Did she say why she took this staircase down?
No, it makes sense if she was checking on JonBenet first. It doesn't make sense if she wasn't checking on JonBenet first. Although, as it turns out, because according to John Andrew, she for some reason takes this staircase most frequently, according to John Andrew. So this presents dual issues. If that is the staircase she takes frequently, then whoever put the note there had to know that was the staircase she takes most frequently. Like, had to know she would go down that staircase at some point that night.
Yep. Also, I'm assuming you're going to allude to this, considering the emphasis that you put on it, and also the weird emphasis that she put on it is noting specifically about the $2,500 that she had to lend, and that, I got to put a check out for that, feels like she's planting information for a specific reason.
Hoffman Pugh sued them. This is another thing I think is really funny. I keep seeing people on Reddit specifically, and I'm not trying to disparage these people. They don't do this for a living. So these are people who, and in many cases, one of them even watches this show, and she's been very polite, and I'm grateful for that. A lot of what I've been doing on Reddit is kind of like presenting, the one side, seeing what the other side will say, and I'm grateful for how polite everybody has been over there, which is odd for Reddit. It's weird that you find people on Reddit and they're nice. But one of the girls I've been talking to, I think it's a girl, she said that she watches the show, and she was actually disappointed that we were using Thomas and Kohler. And one of the things that I've seen coming up over and over again is, well, Thomas was sued. Kohler was sued, like for the CBS thing. Thomas was sued for his book. Okay, well, so were the Ramseys. Nobody ever actually went to court. They were all settled. Now, if you tell me there was a defamation suit, they went to court, and it was adjudicated that this was defamation, I'm a little bit more willing to believe it. I think that the Ramsey strategy, I haven't looked too deeply into it, but from what I can tell, the Ramsey strategy with the Thomas case was probably to, get him to a point where it was too expensive to continue the lawsuit, which is typically what people or companies who have more money do when they're suing people or companies who have less money. If you can burn the cash and win the suit by doing so, they will try to do it. So anyway, moving along here a little bit, I do also think it's interesting. It was $2,000. It was not 2,500. It was 2,000 to be paid back in $200 installments deducted from her paycheck over the next 10 weeks or something. I will point out, I kind of get on the one hand why you might say, all right, well, I'll give you the loan, because you don't want your staff seeking handouts and all that. I get it. But at the same time, you can't give her $2,000. You can't say, here's a Christmas bonus. Give it to her as a Christmas bonus, you selfish bitch.
I'll tell you, man, you don't get to be CEO by giving out favors.
That's how I became a CEO.
Yeah, but, that goes against the narrative of
fair.
the American national CEO.
But yeah, it is Christmas. You could do this in a way that it does not need to be a handout, Also, from what I understand, from what Linda Hoffman-Pugh said, it sounds like she actually got the loan. Like that had already happened. From how it sounds with Linda Hoffman-Pugh. I might be wrong about that. I'm still working through a lot of the details. If you guys are wondering why what was supposed to be 2 videos is now a multi-part project with live shows where we're going over this. Part of this is the research process for me, by the way. Sitting here talking it out, this is part of my research process, like House MD. We got to have Lodge something.
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially what we do on a daily basis or a semi-daily basis. Is like, literally, you called me today.
I didn't just call you. I actually walked over to your house and threw this book in your hands.
We did both.
Yeah.
That's the funny part, is like you called me and then you were like, this is not enough. And then you knocked on my door.
I needed him to physically read the book. And it was funny because the specific part I had him read, he was like kind of not understanding why it was relevant. And then he flipped the book over and he was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
I thought he was reading Thomas's book.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, just making our way through this, though, what kind of how selfish do you have to be to not offer your cleaning lady a bonus at Christmas that is, I mean, you guys just got a $118,000 bonus. You couldn't part with $2,000 of it as a Christmas bonus for your cleaning lady, who, by the way, spent 6 months of her employment washing your daughter's soiled sheets every morning. You can't give her a $2,000 bonus? That's hazmat at that point. There were multiple points where Hoffman-Pugh mentioned that she had found feces. And from the later investigation, it doesn't seem like that was JonBenet. So that is actually hazmat at that point. That is, if you are a housekeeper and there is that kind of thing, your employer cannot tell you you have to do that. And if she fires you because of it, depending on the state you work in and what your agreement is, you might actually be able to sue. Probably not in this case, but she's doing work here that deserved to be overpaid, And again, it's Christmas. You talk this big game, oh, we're a loving Christian family, we don't understand why this happened to us. Well, maybe it's because you're a loving Christian family who has been immaculately blessed by God to be worth $7 million, and you couldn't part with $2,000 to give your housekeeper at Christmas for necessary. It was for rent, Aiden. Rent.
Was there medical expenses in there as well?
There was a little bit of medical expenses. It was like dentist visit or something like that. But it was primarily like rent, truck repairs, dental bills. You're not good Christians. It doesn't matter how many times you say, oh, well, we're good Christian folk. No, you're not. You're the worst. And personally, I got to be honest, part of this whole thing for me is I'm offended. As a Christian, I'm offended by their behavior and their audacity to call themselves Christians. I mean, just... If somebody came to me right now and said, hey, somebody I care about. Actually, we have an example of this.
I was going to say, we already did that.
A couple of months ago, somebody came to us that we care about very much, a good friend of ours who was down on some luck, needed to pay her rent, and we were like, you know what, here, we not just going to give it out, but you have a skill, we're going to pay you for that skill so that we can make sure you get this money. And they couldn't even do that. It was going to be, yeah, we'll give you the loan, but we're going to take it all back. I was offered to be paid back. I said no. I said, do the work for us. That's paid back. That's how I consider it. She could have asked Hoffman-Pugh, hey, could you do a couple extra shifts? Do you know how to do any landscaping? Like, is there anything, could you pick weeds when the summer rolls around? There were a bunch of other options, but no. Spare me the good Christian bullshit on this one because you aren't. I mean, I'm angry. Anyway, also just a weird thing to write in the book. Like, you're already casting suspicion on this person who, by the way, after Patsy had named Linda Hoffman Pugh as a suspect the morning it happened, after Hoffman Pugh had been interviewed by police, and they kind of came to the conclusion it's probably not her because she's rather rotund and not in shape enough, and broke down immediately. Gave no signs of guilt, was fully cooperative, handed over everything, even though at multiple junctures it made them look guilty. As I said in the video on Friday, they were asked, do you have any rolls of black duct tape? Yeah, 3, only one's unused. Do you have any nylon cord? Yeah, we've got 2. Do you have, a paintbrush? Yes. And in fact, there's a cord wrapped around it. Like, everything possible made it look like it was them. You'd have to be... This is the point at which you go, all right, crime is very sophisticated. If it's an intruder, this is a sophisticated crime. These are not sophisticated people. They didn't do this, I had the question, well, maybe Merv sold somebody the information because they were denied the loan or something. Maybe it was a revenge thing. He said, well, I need the money anyway, so, here, just so you know, if you go in this window, you can sneak into this house, and, that would explain the $118,000, right? Linda might have seen that number. She might have heard it discussed. But I don't like it.
No, it's considering the scenario, it's too much of a stretch.
Because the house is complicated, Like even Merv was like, yeah, nobody's making their way around that thing. As did Linda and Nedra and John Andrew and Melinda. Everybody, So, I could see there being a Merv Pugh angle. I'm going to need more evidence. I don't think he's running in those circles.
No, they just don't fit the profile.
They don't at all. And I mean, who's he going to sell that information to? And who's going to trust him? This guy was drunk when the cops showed up at 2 PM. He's got no teeth. If I'm a sophisticated criminal, if I'm a white collar criminal, or a really good cat burglar, somebody approached me and they're like, "Hey, I got the skinny on a good mark." I'm not going to take that person seriously. I'm simply not going to. Also, they very obviously didn't know any details. When you look at the interview results, they didn't know any of the details of the case. They weren't even aware she was dead. They got there and they were like, what do you mean she's missing? Oh my God, I was worried this was going to happen. But police eventually, and this isn't just, this is me going off my opinion of the first 48 hours, the police fully cleared them. And then Pugh sued. And I believe she did settle. So good for them at least. They deserve that. Wouldn't give them a $2,000 loan. They probably took him for a ride. Anyway, moving back. So here's the interesting part. She also gives us, Patsy gives us how much of the note she read, right? From Mr. Ramsey to, you must follow our instructions to the letter. That is before any of the stuff about, if you talk to so much of the stray dog, she dies. If you talk to the police, she dies, blah, 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 blah. She stopped reading there. I quickly scanned the page. $118,000 the writer demands. I gasped for air, blah, blah, blah. Why? And here's where I get really curious, because she says she rushes upstairs, checks in JonBenet's bedroom. The bed is empty. Now, Linda Hoffman Pugh and Suzanne Savage said that JonBenet typically slept with the door open. Just a thought. We'll come back to that one. But here's where we go. So she's on the second floor, right? Can you pull up the floor plan again?
Yep, hang on. Gotta make sure it's pulled up. Second floor, you said?
Yep.
All right, and boom, we got second floor.
Mm-hmm. Aiden, where is JonBenet's bedroom?
JonBenet's bedroom looks like it's on the northwest side of the house.
And where is Burke's bedroom?
Burke's bedroom looks like it's on the southeast side of the house.
Right, so they're basically opposite sides, but are there not a series of corridors connecting those two rooms? In fact, really, 2 corridors? One turn. If you're standing outside of JonBenet's bedroom, there's 1 turn. Correct?
Honestly, looks more like 2 here. Looks like if you're going to be here, you got to go here and then there.
Yeah, okay, so 2. The point is, there's not a series of walls that are going to deflect sound all that much. You're going to get a couple of bounces. Somebody screaming from JonBenet's bedroom should be audible in Burke's bedroom, right?
Yeah.
At the very least, if John upstairs can hear Patsy screaming, Burke should be able to hear Patsy screaming, right?
Oh, almost certainly, yeah.
Right? Yep. So she screams, John, help. JonBenet's gone. He meets me wearing only his underwear. That's going to be important in a moment. Burke, John yells. What about Burke? Both of us race to Burke's room at the far end of the second floor. Not that far. And find him apparently still asleep. John heard her from upstairs with the water running. As we find out, Burke was awake. They didn't check very hard. Best not to arouse him until we figure out what's happening here. By the way, it's rouse, not arouse. Freudian slip? I don't know. Under the circumstances, who can really tell? Anyway, she goes through, and John, as it seems, was the first one to read the ransom note in its entirety. The ransom note which says, any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. Now keep in mind, speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. Now, Aiden, was that not from, I think, Dirty Harry?
Yeah, I think one part of it was from Dirty Harry.
Something was from Ransom, something was from Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Like, that specific part was from one of the movies.
Yep.
That was ripped straight from a movie, and they had a poster for that movie in their home. All right, so anyway, just to be clear, John has read all of this, where it says, if you talk to anybody at all, your daughter dies. It also says, where is it? You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. So if you really believe your daughter has been kidnapped, what do you do in this situation? Do you immediately call the police? Or do you follow the instructions?
Definitely do exactly the opposite of what the instructions of the people that kidnapped my daughter say to do.
Right, it's if you do anything but go to the bank and take this money out, she dies. So what do? They call the cops. Ready for this? He finishes reading. She asks, what do we do? I stammer. He shouts, call the police. Are you sure? Yes, call them. So John, who has just finished reading a ransom note that says, if you call the police, we kill your daughter, his first thought is call the police. Now, Aiden, in the note, do you recall how it said the money should be gathered?
I don't remember if it said, I'm imagining it said cash. I know it said in a proper attaché.
Oh, of course, yes, because, small foreign factions use the term attaché.
Yes.
Now, I understand that in the 70s and 80s, this was the vernacular for spy movies. What spies are involved in this? This is a terrorist organization, if anything. I mean, and also from where that they're going to use attaché? They're that familiar with American media and British media that they're going to use attaché in this circumstance? Maybe. I don't buy it. It looks to me like this was written by somebody who is well-educated, especially because at the very beginning of the note, 2 words are spelled incorrectly, and then for the rest of the note, everything is spelled correctly, even more difficult words, like business. She spells with 2 S's, B-U-S-S. I believe possess was the same way or something like that. Possession. Also really interesting, in the printed version, she gives the correct spelling. In the written version, it was an incorrect spelling. I think that was deliberate. And I think that spelling it incorrectly in the first one is deliberate too, because the only 2 misspellings are in the first paragraph. Everything else is spelled. So, Aiden, let me ask you this question. How do you spell the word possession?
P-O-S. I'm assuming it's P-O-S-S-E, possess, S-I-O-N.
So 2 S's in both cases, right?
I think so.
Yeah, 2 S's in both cases. Business, she added a second S.
Okay.
So that's fairly easy. These are like 5th grade spelling bee terms, right? We got to think about it a little bit because it's been a while.
Yeah.
We don't think about these things. I spelled balloon wrong in a spelling bee once. I'm very literate and I spelled balloon wrong. So anyway, they're then told, you will withdraw $118,000 from your account. That's not a normal number to ask for in a ransom. That's the kind of number you ask for if John just got a $118,117.50 bonus. You're going to take Also, why these denominations don't make sense. Why would the first 100K be in $100 bills and the next 18K be in $20 bills? Wouldn't you want the largest denomination possible so that you don't have to take up so much space? You're going to launder 100,000 in $100 bills and then the rest in $20 bills? What are you doing here? Yeah. Make sure you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. Aiden, spell the word adequate for me.
Oh, God. ADEQUATE.
Yeah. Do you think that or possession are harder words to spell if you're not a native English speaker?
Not a native English speaker. I mean, they're both going to be relatively difficult, but probably. I don't know. Probably.
I would think adequate because the Q is really confusing in English.
Yeah.
One of the most confusing things for non-English speakers is Q and X in our language. So we also have, what do we have in here? Countermeasures is spelled correctly. Underestimate is spelled correctly. Exhausting is spelled correctly. Immediate is spelled correctly. Particularly is spelled correctly. And they got business wrong. They're familiar with his business, but they don't know how to spell the word business.
Is there
They have his daughter in their possession, but they're not sure how that word is spelled.
Are there any other words with double S's at any point in there with correct spelling? Because it seems like the only words with incorrect spelling
Are those two with a double S?
Yeah.
I believe those are the only two misspelled words, and they're the ones with double S's. But they're different double S's. That's my favorite part. Business and possession are different double S sounds. Because possession does have a double S, I think. I don't know. On here it does. I can't tell what's spelled right. Anyway, moving along, because at this point we're nitpicking, right? This is nitpicking. I'm nitpicking right now. You know what's not nitpicking? Got to have someone here, I think. I dial the Fernie's number. We need help, I scream. Please come over here. I take a deep breath and grab the phone again from its cradle, dialing the Whites this time. Now, remember, if you talk to even a stray dog, we're now at police and two family friends.
Yeah, see, here's the thing real quick before you continue, is that police, I could theoretically understand in a panic,
calling the cops.
Yeah. The friends make zero sense whatsoever after reading that note.
What also makes zero sense is the fact that they told him to go to the bank in person and withdraw the money.
Mm-hmm.
And he called his banker over the phone. That wasn't the instruction.
But I'll tell you what, that makes...
You couldn't even do that one right?
But that makes far more sense than calling your friends.
Oh, yeah,
after
definitely.
That note.
100%. But anyway, yeah, so... grab the phone again from its cradle, dialing the Whites this time. JonBenet's missing, I yell into the phone. Please get over here. We need you. I hang up immediately and slump against the wall. Now, Aiden, do you recall from Friday's video what Fleet White said he was told?
Oh, he said he didn't know anything. He just said they needed him to come over. That was it.
Yeah, he wasn't told anything about what was going on. I don't think the Fernies were either. From what I read today, from their interviews. That's a lie right there. And this wasn't written in the immediate aftermath. This wasn't written on December 27th. This was published in 2000. 3 full years later. There was time to correct that. There was time to make sure you had your information all in place. But what she's trying to do here is not, in my opinion, tell the true story. She's trying to construct a narrative that lines up. Problem is, she had the narrative line up with their stories and did not think about how she could make the narrative work for everybody else's stories. Probably because she may not have known all of the details of everyone else's stories. It's, a lot was handed over to the DA, who then handed it over to the Ramsey attorneys, which again, that's not a failure of the police. That's a failure of the DA. That is beyond the pale. You never do that. They weren't officially suspects yet. They had a defense team. They had PIs. The cops don't have to share anything with the PIs. Especially when the PIs are actually going to witnesses before the cops even get there and interviewing them first. So why do the PIs need the cops' interviews with the same people they'd already interviewed?
Great question.
That kind of stuff comes out during discovery. That's the stuff that comes up when you go to court. They basically gave the Ramsey attorneys the kind of access you have after you've been charged. That's not normal.
No, it's extremely not normal, especially considering that the vast majority of incidents in which an active investigation is going on, even if you're a suspect or not, you do not get to know the details of an ongoing investigation, especially if you're a potential suspect. But here it makes almost no sense whatsoever that they would have any knowledge about what the police are doing.
Nope, nothing. So let's go down a little bit further. After a while, I see the headlights of a squad car, which slowly comes to a stop across the street in front of our house. Aiden, how long was it between her calling the cops and the cops showing up?
Wasn't it like 4 or 5 minutes?
4 minutes. Then we switch to John's narration. For the first time, I am aware that I've been racing around the house in my underwear. I hurry back to the third floor bedroom to grab my clothes. I stop in JonBenet's room and look under the bed to make sure she isn't there. What? Huh? Anyway, what we get from there is, I can get JonBenet back, I think, resolutely. I've got to get my wits about me. Well, you already broke all the rules the ransomers gave you. So what do we get here? And he makes it about Beth, too. I put on pants and a shirt and hurry back downstairs. I meet Patsy and Officer Rick French in the hallway near the front door. According to Rick French, when he got there, John Ramsey was downstairs in the kitchen, already dressed. Not coming down the stairs. He was already down there when Patsy opened the door. These are little lies, but it's the little lies that keep piling up that make you go, these aren't misremembrances. These are deliberate mistruths, in my opinion, allegedly, perchance.
You can't just put in perchance.
So we can keep going, though. Here we go. I remember Burke asleep in his room. This is a little bit later. This is after everybody's gotten there, you know. Okay. I remember Burke asleep in his bedroom. This should be around 8, right? Sometime around 8. Before 8, at the very least, because Linda Arndt got there at 8:10 and Burke was not there. I don't want to go get him up in the midst of this madness and wonder what is going on. I don't want him to get up in the midst of this madness and wonder what is going on. You could have woken him up at any point in the morning. It's been a while now. I ask Fleet White if Burke can go to his house and be with Fleet Jr. He agrees. According to Fleet White, it was his idea that Burke go over. And then the Fernies were like, you know what, that's a really good idea. We'll send our kids over too. So John Ramsey is now saying things were his idea. Again, remember, this was written 3 years later. Fleet White said this on December 27, 1996. Fleet White is first in best dressed on this claim. Now, John probably could have cleared this up very easily if he had submitted to a police interview before April of 1997.
Which, to be very clear, was how long after this incident?
4 months.
And what is the reason that they didn't do a proper interview? Well, hang on. To my understanding,
The Ramseys kept refusing.
well, here's the thing, but they said they talked to the police.
Mhm.
They said that they talked to the police early on. So they
yeah.
didn't understand why everybody kept saying that they didn't talk to the police.
Well, it's because when they did talk to the police, they didn't tell them anything about the night in question. They were like, oh, well, Patsy had cancer. It was hard. JonBenet is a pageant star. No, I can't talk about that right now. Like, Patsy was in no condition to be interviewed. If I had just lost my child, I would probably want to do nothing but talk to the police.
And give them as much information as possible to hopefully find my daughter.
Yeah. Also, I mean, you're telling me that on December 27th, December 28th, you know, basically the entire first 5 days, Patsy is in no condition to talk to police. Who, by the way, travel to Atlanta, tell the Ramseys they're traveling to Atlanta so that they can interview the Ramseys, right? The Ramseys know this. So for 5 days, 26th through the 31st, Patsy's in no condition to talk to police. And then on January 1st, she gives an interview on CNN. In front of cameras, in front of the whole world, she is now comfortable to give an interview on CNN. Well, clearly, you know, the police, they're like, oh, well, I mean, if she goes on CNN and she gives this interview and she says, we want to help, we want to talk to the police. Steve Thomas even wrote in the book, he's like, you know, I was like, maybe we were wrong. You know, maybe we had the wrong idea about the Ramseys, that their behavior wasn't suspicious, that they were just grieving parents, and everybody reacts differently to grief. So they tell the Ramseys they're coming, and they pester the DA. They're like, hey, they're willing to talk to you. Get the interview scheduled. They fly to Atlanta. When they arrive in Atlanta and they get ready to go talk to the Ramseys, where are the Ramseys, Aiden? Do you know?
I don't.
They're on a plane back to Boulder. So they knew the cops were coming. They knew the cops had traveled across half the country to interview them. And that they had just been on national television saying we want to cooperate, we want to talk to the cops. And instead of waiting, in the place where the Boulder police would have less jurisdiction, by the way, might even in fact need the Georgia police to make the arrest should they decide to do that.
But Mattis, I'm sure that John had a very important meeting he couldn't miss.
No, he had to go stay at his friend's house. Mm-hmm. The important meeting he couldn't miss was the one that suddenly popped up on December 26, 1996, 40 minutes after he found his daughter's body in his own basement, killed with instruments from inside the home.
Yes.
Yeah.
A meeting in Atlanta that he had to go to
when he had been planning to fly to Michigan that night.
Yep.
This meeting he couldn't miss that didn't exist 6 hours prior.
Yes. I'm sure that the incident where they left Atlanta to go back to Boulder was a similar scenario, that he just had a meeting pop up that he really couldn't miss, he had to leave for immediately.
It's very important, but it's whatever. And then later on in the book, he says, I don't realize it at the time, but the first action police should take in a missing child situation is to thoroughly search the entire house in case the child has fallen asleep or is playing or hiding in some unusual place. Unfortunately, the police did not conduct an extensive search of our home.
Just real quick, I think that generally applies.
It does, but not when there's a ransom note.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is that if the child is missing and it might, your child might be somewhere in the home, it makes sense to do a really thorough search. But not when there is a 3-page note that says, we've taken your child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
Just how that happens.
Yeah,
the cops actually didn't screw that up. A lot of people harp on this and they should have checked anyway. There was literally no reason to. It would have been a waste of time in the investigation they were trying to conduct. That room could not grant you access from outside of the home into the home. Therefore, it was not a point of entry. And what they were looking for at that time was a point of entry because they had been told very explicitly, we have a kidnapping here. Now, what I showed you later in the book was actually, I've lost track of the page at this point, but it's the part where John and Rod Westmoreland are talking. I'm trying to find it again, about the FBI involvement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Rod Westmoreland, by the way, is the one who scheduled that interview with CNN for the Ramseys. The Ramseys would later say it was Fleet White for absolutely no reason, and then they would blame Fleet White for killing their daughter. Here we go. All right. How many of you are on the case? All right. How many of you are on the case right now? Rod pressed. You know what? No, I should probably give some context of where we are in the story here.
Yeah. What's the day and time?
So, he says, I do remember that detectives Arndt and Mason came back and forth a number of times to talk to us. I'm just kind of going through here. I just want to make sure I'm right about this one because from what I can tell, Aiden, the conversation I'm about to read to you guys happened on December 26th, 1996, the first night that they were at the Fernies.
Mm-hmm. Also the day that all of this occurred.
Yeah, the day that all this occurred, right. I just want to make sure of this, yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure so far. I want to make sure I'm right about this one. Yeah, for a long time I couldn't exist, blah, blah, horrible feeling. It's difficult to recall much of what happened during the next 24 hours. So this is the next 24 hours after they had gone to the Fernies.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, this discussion could have happened before 9:30 p.m. on December 27th. Could have happened during it, but it didn't. And here's how I know that. So this conversation, he is suggesting happened on December 27th, based on what's here, or late at night on the 26th. Arndt and Mason weren't there on the 26th, so it has to have been the 27th, right?
By there, you specifically mean at the Fernies?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, uniformed police officers were there around the clock, watching, listening, taking notes about our behavior, I suppose. Only vaguely I recall them talking to me. The police kept asking questions. We answered as best we could. No, they didn't. They say that Arndt and Mason came back multiple times. That does not appear to be the case. But this page right here, it's about where is the FBI? Now, keep in mind, Aiden, this is after they knew it was a murder.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI does not do homicide. The FBI does organized crime homicide. They do homicide across state lines. They do kidnappings. But a homicide in one jurisdiction, that's not the FBI's job. Now, the FBI can have their presence requested, right? And by December 27th, by the nighttime of December 27th, they had verbal confirmation from Agent Walker and 2 other FBI agents that all they needed to do was call, right? So here we go. Rod Westmoreland, my good friend who had helped raise the ransom money, arrived from Atlanta. I was grateful to see him. Over the 20 years I had known Rod, he'd always come to my aid when I needed him. For him to leave Atlanta during the Christmas season and during a busy time of the year for him professionally was no small sacrifice. He started questioning the police, hammering away on what I wanted to know. Now, when Rod Westmoreland introduced himself to the police, he told them he was an attorney. He is a financial advisor. All right. How many of you are on the case right now? Rod pressed. Well, there's 8 of us. Rod pressed further. Well, where are the rest of them? Keep in mind, it's the only time this specific conversation could have happened, so far as I understand, is after 9:30 p.m. on December 27th. At the very least, it was the afternoon of December 27th. Cannot have been any earlier than that.
27th to 26th?
27th.
Okay.
It can't have been the 26th. You'll see why. How many of you are on the case right now, Rod pressed? Well, there's 8 of us. Rod pressed further. Well, where are the rest of them? Actually, a couple are on vacation and a few are sick, the detective answered. Let me put it another way, Rod bore down. Exactly how many are working on this problem right now? Detective Arndt and I are here. The detective sounded as if he were backpedaling. We have another person working at the house. You're telling me that you only have 2 or 3 at most working on the case. Rod glared at the man. Something like that, the detective admitted. The FBI, Rod asked again. We only have to call them, the detective explained. On December 26th, let me go back for a moment here. On December 26th, where was I? Lost my train of thought for a moment. There were 3 detectives working the case. On December 27th, however, there were, in fact, a larger number. I think at least 5. Might have been as many as 8. The FBI had already left. They had said, we'll help if you request it, right? So, this conversation, based on everything that's in here, has to have happened on the 27th. Because in order for the FBI to have already said, we're clear, we'll help out, it has to have been the 27th. Okay? If there's also 8 officers working it. But if there's 8 officers working it, then there aren't 3 officers working it, I'm trying to remember. There was a point I made earlier that I'm really struggling to get back into my head. Yeah. Our kidnapping murder case was not being given the earth-shattering importance we wanted and expected. The morning of the 26th, I'd been told the FBI was on the way. Now I learned they weren't even on the case. The morning of the 26th, I had learned. Not that morning. The morning of the 26th. This was on the 27th. On the 26th, the FBI was on the way. And now John's being told they're not even on the case. Well, that's funny because John was there when FBI agent Ron Walker walked into his home. So John had met the FBI agent on his case. And he should have understood at that point that this was a homicide and not a kidnapping. And therefore, this was not an FBI case. This is framing what he's doing right here, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's if we look at this one, because it's Arndt and Mason weren't there on the 26th, so it can't have been Arndt and Mason. If it's Arndt and Mason, it has to be on the 27th, but it was on the 27th, then there were more than 3 detectives working on the case. The 3 detectives he's mentioning here are Everett, himself, and Arndt, if Mason's the one answering questions. This has to have happened. This conversation must have been the one that Arndt and Mason had with them on the 27th. Which means that the details of this conversation cannot have occurred. He's either somehow misremembering these 2 things, or he's deliberately lying about it.
Well, given the amount of inconsistencies in the previous elements of the book, what would you consider the more likely scenario to be?
Come on, we both know what I think that is. So, and I apologize for getting a little more rambling in here. I had stuff specifically highlighted and outlined, but I didn't have a ton of time to get through it. So we're now past that point. But, I mean, Later, Rod spoke privately, telling me what he heard made him suspicious of the ability of these police officials and what they were doing. He didn't like how they were handling our case. Now, keep in mind, Rod is a financial advisor. Rod is not an attorney. Rod is not a criminal investigator. Rod is not a journalist who covers these kinds of things. Rod knows absolutely nothing about criminal justice. The police consider this man a suspect. Not officially, but they consider him a suspect at this point. So I want to know why it is that, John is framing it as if the FBI never showed up when they did. Why he's framing a conversation that happened on the 27th as having happened on why he's framing a conversation that can't have happened on the 27th as having happened on the 27th. And why, he's leaving out the fact that at this point, if this is the conversation in question on the 27th, he's supposed to be answering questions about what happened about the night before. He's not supposed to be hammering the detective, asking questions about why aren't you solving this case. By this point, the police were basically doing everything they could. There was nothing else that could be done here, So if we go back a little bit.
Really quickly, I just want to clarify. You were saying a conversation that can't have happened on the 27th, supposedly happening on the 27th. I thought it had to have happened on the 27th.
That's what I'm saying, is this, in order for this conversation to have happened with the people involved, it has to have happened on the 27th. But in order for the details of the conversation to be accurate, it has to have happened on the 26th.
So, to clarify, he is implying that conversation happened on the 26th.
No, he's implying the conversation happened, and I don't think it did.
Got it. Okay. Just want to make sure that's clear for the audience.
The characters involved in that conversation mean it must have happened on the 27th. But the details of the conversation show it must have happened on the 26th. Those are mutually exclusive. This cannot be a real conversation. And it's suspicious to me that he remembered the details of that conversation so very well. Because if you read Thomas's book and you read Kohler's book, it's always a lot more broad, believable that this was said and he remembered it 2 years later. And this is a guy who had case notes. John, who doesn't have case notes, or at least only has what the DA gave him, he has perfect recollection of all of these conversations. Now, where do we go here? Okay. Where were we? Yeah. Officer French takes Detective Arndt in to meet Patsy. Mrs. Ramsey, he says, if my child were missing, this is the detective I would want working the case. You can rest assured you're in good hands now. Arndt would go on to be the one that they consistently showed as being insane. Okay. She tells her that oftentimes kidnappers will get scared and drop off the child at a supermarket parking lot, then we'll find her. Linda Arndt had absolutely no business being a detective. I mean, I got a lot of flack on TikTok for, not talking about some of the police problems here. There were definitely police problems. They messed up a number of times, very seriously.
That's not the primary issue in this scenario.
No, it's not. They were on the wrong foot when they got there because they thought it was a kidnapping. It was not.
I think one of the big issues that you run into on TikTok and other platforms is that there seems to be a gap in the understanding that it's not that they messed up in the beginning, it's that they were operating under standard procedures for a kidnapping, and it turned out to not be a kidnapping. It's not that they messed that up, it's that the scenario of the incident and the case very rapidly changed.
Oh, and it was also 100% the civil government's fault that the police department was so unequipped for this, by the way.
And you went very well into that with Thomas and the number of detective stories in the last episode.
It was exactly. They basically anybody who was doing the policing job correctly, they pushed out. They were like, no. We Boulder's not a violent city. They're not criminals. They should be treated like citizens who haven't done anything wrong. And you know what? If somebody's smoking weed in their backyard, they probably don't deserve to be arrested and shipped to jail. But if somebody's waving knives at passersby in an intersection and they charge a cop, shooting them's really the only option.
And remind me again, whose story is that?
Thomas.
And when did that happen?
Steve Thomas.
Yes.
In, I think, 1991.
Yes.
At another point, he was, and the exact words of Pete Hofstrom, who's going to become very important in this story as the recorded series goes along. In the words of Pete Hofstrom, couldn't you have just whacked him with a stick or something?
And remind the audience, who is that?
Deputy DA Pete Hofstrom?
Yes.
He was one of the deputy DAs basically leading the prosecution here. and was the one who was all buddy with Ramsey attorney Brian Morgan.
Mm-hmm. And
like, according to Thomas, went to Brian Morgan at one point. And I will say, you know, with Thomas, with some of the stuff, it is, you know, I heard this from another person in the department. I trust Thomas's statements about what he witnessed himself very well. Also, I can't wait to go over the deposition that Eldon Wood, the guy who pretended he had proof positive that the 2020 election was stolen, like that guy, who turned out to like not even really have an argument. Like he just was kind of like, yeah, I got it. I have this. It's definitely there, for like 6 months. If you read the deposition and you know what a deposition is, you can tell, and we went over this in the last episode, you can tell of this show. Thomas was looking at this going, I am not going to give you anything that you can use as grounds to sue me. And that's all it was. Wood, you can tell from the way he speaks, he's trying to do the thing lawyers do in depositions, where they ask questions in such a legalese way that you don't even know what you're saying by the end of it. You know, I wish I had it right in front of me, but they were like, you know, do you or do you not think that sometimes a person who has been arrested but not yet charged might be found innocent or guilty of a crime that they were not guilty of at the time that they were charged of it? And you're like, what?
Yeah.
That's how the questions read. And he's not being given written questions here. He doesn't have time to digest that. He's like, I think sometimes people are arrested and found guilty.
Yeah.
But what Wood was trying to do was get him to say sometimes people who have been suspected aren't actually guilty, which is a no-brainer, and Thomas basically says as much in the deposition. But Wood is trying to force it to a point where it can be used in the court.
Well, that's the thing, is when you read those two people, you also have to understand the position they're both in, is that one person, the prosecutor, is trying to get this person to say something that will benefit their case. Whereas the person on the stand is in a position where they're trying to make sure that they don't do anything that could then incriminate themselves unintentionally in something that they were not involved in directly, but because the legal system likes to find any scapegoat they can, people need to defend themselves as much as frequently possible.
I'm trying to find one specific thing in here because it is so very relevant. And I'm struggling to catch it because it is about... Oh, by the way, there's a strange vehicle in the alley behind the Barn Hills. I note, this is John. He didn't mention it to cops for months. That came out, I think, in like April. But, you know, sure in the book. We also have, I forgot, suddenly I remember that Mike Archuleta is to meet us at the Jeffco airport. I need to call him and explain what happened. JonBenet's been kidnapped, I tell him, then ask him to get a message to the big kids to call me immediately when they arrive in Minneapolis. Not sure how the pilot was supposed to do that one. Also, the pilot did not say this happened when he was interviewed. Okay, at this point, I'm not sure whether they should come to Denver or go back to Atlanta. The next time he called, it was JonBenet's dead and I need to go to Atlanta. That's what Archuleta said. Archuleta also said that, like, you know, the story was a little different the two times, but that's obviously the kidnapping. Where are we? The note says the kidnappers will be watching. Maybe I can catch them looking at us. The note also said that if you spoke to so much as a stray dog, John, they were going to kill your daughter. There are police outside your house. If the kidnappers are real, JonBenet is dead. He's too smart to be this stupid. Like, he's legitimately too smart to be this stupid. Is an issue in this case. What else do we have here? The one, it's driving me insane because somewhere in this book, is that it? God, where is the part? There's one point in here where he says that either he says or Patsy says that John was, you know, sitting by the phone all morning and the call never came. So I'm trying to find the bit about the call not coming. When the phone rings, walking up the stairs, several officers. Where is this part? It's driving me insane.
And what is it specifically? So the call not coming would be in reference to which call in particular?
The call from the ransomers.
Okay.
Yeah, so the call from the ransomers was supposed to come. At some point in here, it said that John was waiting in it was either the solarium or something like that, wherever they had the phone, all day or all morning. According to the detectives who were there, that's not true at all. John was bouncing around the house. They had to drag him back into that room multiple times. So, once again, John directly contradicting the observations of multiple police detectives and officers. It's driving me pretty insane that I cannot find the exact passage. But, you know. Oh, wait, I love this part. A person comes up and says he's Detective Mason. I assume he is with the FBI. Finally, the police will get help, I think. Later, I will learn that Mason is another Boulder PD detective, and that the police have, in fact, kept the FBI at bay, not letting them inside the house. That wasn't true. The FBI only got there at 11. They were in the briefing room for 45 minutes because, again, this was a kidnapping. There was no reason to believe they were actively needed at the house at that moment. They still had to get the briefing done, right? They're still trying to figure out what to do here because for the FBI, they're not crime scene techs. The crime scene techs are crime scene techs. The detectives are detectives. The FBI doesn't need to be there at that time. So they're where they're supposed to be, at the headquarters, being briefed on what happened. Once again, John Ramsey framing the police. And just for legal reasons, what I mean by that is framing the situation, not framing them as in accusing them, pinning the crime on them.
Yeah, it's constructing the story in the way it's told in a narrative format that essentially attributes more or less probable cause in this scenario of, I guess, ignorance or stupidity or incompetence to the police.
Yep. Let's see, where are we now? Here we go. I found the line. I thought it was at the top of the page. It's actually in the middle. I pace back and forth in front of the telephone, desperately wanting it to ring, but it doesn't. 10 o'clock comes and goes. Nothing. The note says the kidnapper will call tomorrow. I suddenly realize I don't know when the note was written, so I don't know for sure whether tomorrow means the 26th or 27th. Now, obviously, the note was written on the night of the 25th into the 26th. I think that tomorrow, under the circumstances, should have meant the 27th. But I think if you're a ransomer breaking into the house and you're aware they're going to find this note on the morning of the 26th, does it make more sense for you to say, I will call between 8 and 10 a.m. today? Or does it make more sense to say, I will call between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow if you're calling on the 26th?
Yeah, today.
Yes, exactly. Whether you wrote it at 12 p.m. or whether you wrote it at 11 p.m. or 1 a.m., they're asleep, they're finding the note in the morning, you're writing today. If you mean the 26th. You might write tomorrow, however, if you were writing the note from inside the house, so to speak. If you are Patsy Ramsey writing a note and it's 11 p.m., then it's tomorrow. If you're the ransomer, it's today. Just like how on the gravestone, when the cause of death was determined to most likely be on the 26th, they put the 25th. Just putting it out there.
To clarify specifically, the medical examiner determined that the time of death was at some point on the 26th. Mm-hmm. But the Ramseys on her gravestone have the 25th.
Yep. Interesting, isn't it? Where are we? What time officers are staying with 10 o'clock comes and goes. Time dusting with black fingerprint powder. Chief Police Tom Kobe. The Chief Police Tom Kobe will later say they didn't treat the house as a crime scene because they thought it was only a kidnapping. That one's on Kobe. He was a moron. Like everything I read about this Kobe guy from either side, he was clearly a patsy, actually.
Yeah, what was the scenario with Thomas? Not the one you described earlier in this show, but the other one that you described on the Friday video.
Oh, how Kobe came in and basically threw out all the rule books, all the training manuals, all the procedures, got rid of like several different ranks, established one rank in between him and sergeant.
Yep.
Went for it was a police others as you would have them police unto you was the actual quote.
Mm-hmm. And then what was the one scenario that Thomas got into with not the knife guy, but there was the other one?
A guy had shot at his wife and was saying he was basically going to commit a murder-suicide. He charged Thomas with a handgun raised, as well Thomas was on the SWAT team. Charged Thomas with a handgun raised, Thomas dropped him, and he got reprimanded for it.
Do you remember what the reprimand specifically was?
I have a feeling you do.
No, I just remember it was somewhere along the lines
He just had to go to internal affairs.
Yeah.
And they were like, stop shooting people who are trying to kill you.
Oh, yeah,
Thomas.
no, that's right. I think it was some form of like anger management training.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yep,
They sent him to conflict resolution training or something.
Yep.
Let's see. I'm trying to find any of the other interesting, because I didn't get super far because there was so much in the first 5 pages.
I will say it is 8:11, so
it is. We should go to Super Chats
yep.
then. Yeah. So, what you guys are going to get once we get through the chronology and everything, because once again, I'm not going to use the Suspects book in the attempt to understand what happened. I'm going to look at the Suspects book and consider it the book written by the suspect. I'm going to trust the police on this one a little bit more than the suspect, especially when the suspect is lying multiple times in the first 5 pages. We got 7 sentences in to the chapter about the morning of December 26th, and there was a lie. 7 sentences. So what you guys are going to get once we get through the chronology here, the way the series is probably going to break down is that we're going to take it up through the grand jury in 1998. And then from there, it will be probably, I'm hoping, for the love of God, I hope it's just one part. Going through what evidence was determined after 1998 and basically what the two sides are and what the evidence is for each. So that will include an analysis of this book. Super chat time.
Super chat time. General similar scenario as last week, especially given the subject matter. We're going to keep things relevant. But we appreciate all chats nonetheless. The first one of relevant super chats is from Shepard for $20. Says, people will only watch the Netflix documentary like that's the best thing ever produced on the subject, then drag someone in TikTok comments when they say, I think the Ramseys did it. Ask me how I know.
I'm guessing it happened to you, just like it happened to me and half the other people in the comment section.
Do you want to comment on that a little bit?
There was one that came up today. I'm going to pull up my TikTok really quick. If you don't follow me on TikTok, it's at the Aiden Mattis. And I do have a lot of followers over there, which is kind of crazy because I barely post anymore. This is the only reason I'm posting on TikTok right now. Was it this one? No, it was this one. Yes. So one of the things I've seen come up a lot is how doors into the home and windows into the home were not locked on that morning, as they had been said to be. Mm-hmm. Right? One specific one that was brought up was, by the way, all of the doors were in fact locked. This one is the butler pantry exterior door was actually found open. There were also a few windows unlocked because they had extension cords going through for Christmas lights. Now, I do want to read through because extension cords going through does not necessitate the window being unlocked. You can drill a hole. Like, that's very doable. Some windows you might even be able to get it through while keeping the window locked, depending on what kind of window we're talking about. But that butler pantry door. John Ramsey said he checked all the doors the night before, and all of them were locked. John Ramsey said he checked all of the doors the morning of, and all of them were locked. Now, when did he do this? I'm not sure, considering the timeline he gave us. But yeah, all of the doors were locked.
Well, there are times in the timeline that he didn't give us that could have made sense, but it's weird that the timeline that other people,
if I remember correctly, it was Fernie who found the open door. It was either him or it was either him or Holverstock, the Reverend. One of them found that this pantry door was open to the outside. It's a butler pantry, so I guess you can go in and out. That was after everybody had checked. That was after the cops had gone around and looked to make sure all the doors were closed. Checked all the points of entry at 6:30 that morning.
Well, they didn't find her body in the wine cellar, so...
So it's unclear exactly what time that was, but I would wonder, and try and triangulate this based on other statements, I would wonder if that syncs up at all with around 10:30 a.m.
That's a good question.
Because that door was found open after 10:30 a.m. Well, John Ramsey disappeared around 10:30 a.m.
For how long?
About an hour and a half. I haven't even gotten to the part where he apparently... It's apparently explained at some point. He says what he was doing during that time period. I haven't got there yet. Despite the fact that I've been reading 4 books on this case. I am jumping around a good amount. I'm not reading them chronologically all the way through, but I have yet to get to that part. So, might be that he said he was getting his mail. I don't know. If it is, then I have to laugh.
That's fair. We'll say, what was it? Cody Bassett was thanking us for what we do. Gomb has sent a number of things. Very kindly. Thank you, Gomb. JMO's saying, read Berserk. Kellen is saying, emo's just country cosplaying as punk. That's all.
Yeah.
Just wanted to,
yeah. No.
Just acknowledging a few of these because we don't want to fully leave you out.
I mean, that's valid.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift is the best pop punk writer of all time.
It's true. Cody's also recommending we watch The Terror. I don't know if you've heard of that show, but it's the Arctic expedition. The ship that got stuck in the ice.
Oh.
Yeah. Might honestly be something worth covering at some point, but
there's something else I thought of today that I was like, I really want to cover that. Now I can't remember what it was.
There's a lot of good options. Also, Ashley, thank you for watching, but I don't know what problem I have with Oklahoma. I wasn't aware that I had one. Maybe I made a joke about Oklahoma at some point, but no, Oklahoma's cool. Hi. How do you? I don't know. She was saying, what's my problem with Oklahoma specifically? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know I had one.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. But specifically, so
there ain't no love in Oklahoma.
True. But the next relevant one's from Ozzy Walker for 2024. Love the specificity, saying, finally live again. Fun fact, children are essentially sociopaths in the first few years of life. They learn to be proper human beings by 6 years old. Otherwise, try and practice patience. I hath spoken perchance. Fair. But yeah, basically, from what I understand, I didn't take the child psychological development course in college, but I had friends who did. And that lines up pretty well with the curriculum that they were being taught. That, yeah, your children need to learn how to be functional humans, and that's a heavy part of being a parent, especially in those first 6 to 10 years.
Yeah, I also think there is a solid possibility that, because here's what I've seen a lot of. Patsy was a doting mother to JonBenet. Patsy was a doting mother to JonBenet.
Just JonBenet.
That's what I'm seeing. Everybody who knew Burke as a child described him as withdrawn, introverted, irritable. Somebody at some point said that they like tapped him on the shoulder and he recoiled and said, "Don't touch me." I don't think those children were treated remotely equally, and that could be because of favoritism, or it could be because early on Burke showed some weird signs. I it's all just so weird. Next
is from Alex, saying thank you for the forensics of the Boy in the Box presentation. That was good. Professor and the class are intrigued by the work now too.
Ooh.
Also, survived a car crash on Friday. So,
oh, nice.
Well done.
Hell yeah, brother.
Attaboy.
That is the best outcome.
Ryan is saying that he shared the new episodes with his mom.
Woo, thank you.
Like him. Thank you. And then Ellen the Howler Werewolf Queen for $50 gave us a PTSD therapy fund. Put it to good use. Thank you. We need it more than you know.
Gonna be needed.
Yep. And then Ryan was asking for $2.31. What Michigan city were they headed to? Do we know?
Charlevoix. which I believe is in the Upper Peninsula.
That sounds right. I feel like I remember you saying they were going to the Upper Peninsula earlier in this series.
Yeah, let me see. I'm going to look it up where it is really quick, but continue.
In addition to that, Hysterical Chaos, who's been a member for 11 months, thank
Wow,
you very
thank you.
much, said,
You can become a member by clicking the Join Channel button under the video, and you can become a member for just $1. It does get you access to some special stuff, but more importantly, it helps support the channel, and it's just $1.
yes. But she asked specifically, or more states.
Okay, it's not Upper Peninsula, but it is northern Michigan.
Got it. But yeah, she states some women never leave the house without getting dolled up. The further you go back in history, the more women this is true for.
Yeah, and Patsy was one of those women.
Yep. Bert Moran says, has anyone looked into the parents? Seems
Oh yeah, I didn't really drill down on that enough, by the way. Again, Patsy's description of what happened here, if you go through it really quick, I'm gonna just hang on. I swing out of bed and abruptly remember that my shower is still broken. Don't need one this morning, I think to myself. Just put my clothes on and, of course, my makeup. I remember my mother's words, never leave the house without your makeup. Plus, we were going to be with Melinda's fiance, Stuart, so I want to make a good impression. Going to be at the airport. I reach for my clothes and start dressing. Minutes later, I hurry down the back stairs from our bedroom to the second floor where the children's bedrooms are located. Aiden, do you notice that there was a step there that did not get mentioned as having been completed?
Which one was it?
Makeup. She says... Now, if she goes, so I want to make a good impression, got to be at the airport by 6:30 or so, going to push us to get everyone going because time is so short. I mean, you could have picked a later flight time. It's your private plane.
Yeah, also, I'm fairly certain if you own the plane, you can show up generally whenever. It just, you have to clear it with ATC when you're getting ready to go on the runway. But
yeah, there was, considering the flight path here is Denver to Minnesota to pick up the other ones, and then Michigan. I'm not sure what that's a full day of flying.
Also, regardless of that everything else in that regard, this is 1996. There was no airport security.
Nope, no TSA.
That's not even a concern. You just show up, even if it was a private airport. That negates that even more.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there was they were driving there themselves. It was their plane. It was their pilot. They could go whenever they wanted.
I cannot think of a single time of the few times that we did have to fly as a family when I was a child. I can't, even if we were just going on a road trip or something, if we had to be on the road by a certain point, I can't really think of a single time that I was woken up less than half an hour before we had to be wherever, not just on the road, but the airport. If we had to be on the road at 6 a.m., my parents were waking me up at 5.
Yeah. Also, considering this is more like a road trip by equivalence, I know for my family in particular, we would say we're going to leave by 10 in the morning.
And we would never actually do it.
No, it'd be 11:30 if we were lucky.
It was usually my mom's fault. Sorry, Mom, I love you, but you are the reason I have a habit of being late. Wonderful woman. I could not have asked for a better mother, but if there was one thing she could be better about, it would be punctuality. Because I have the problem now too. But yeah, so Patsy never actually mentions putting on makeup, and the reason that is relevant, in my opinion, is that she was wearing makeup. And she mentioned that she reached for her clothes and got dressed, but she doesn't mention putting makeup on. And also, again, the kind of makeup Patsy wore takes more than 30 seconds.
Even if she got really good at it.
There's not enough time in this story for her to have gotten dressed and put on a full face of makeup.
Also, I'm sorry. I don't care how much you care about your appearance or how you look to other people. If your daughter's missing, your priority is not how you look that morning.
Yeah, no, I don't think she ever put makeup on that morning.
Yeah.
I think she had the makeup on already.
No, that's my point.
Yeah.
Is that if the presumption is that you went to bed, took your makeup off before you went to bed, got up, discovered that your child was missing, you're not then going to be motivated to put makeup on.
You also aren't going to have time.
No.
Because she called the cops at 5:52, called Barbara Fernie at 5:53, called Fleet White at 5:54, and then the police got there at 5:56.
And that seals the deal enough. But even if she had the time, I can't imagine any mother who loves their child the way that it is described she loved JonBenet that would even think about putting makeup on before finding their child.
Yep.
But Lunar Anarchy gave us $1.57.
Thank you.
TCF gave us a currency of 1,500 that I do not recognize. It's abbreviated ISK, saying Spidey from Behavioral
Wait.
Arts.
Sorry, I forgot about one more lie.
Go ahead.
Forgot about another lie because it was so obvious. On the way home, JonBenet had fallen asleep in the back seat. This is John speaking. I got her out of the car and carried her upstairs to her room, laid her on her bed, and took off her coat and shoes. I was amazed at how sound asleep she was. It had been a long day for her. Patsy came in to finish getting JonBenet ready for bed. The morning of, he told police he had read to both the children and they were both awake. That's not like Patsy mixing up which order she found the note and found JonBenet not in her room. That's an understandable one. That is a complete change of story. That is, my daughter was awake and I spent time reading to her, to my daughter was asleep and I tucked her in and then my wife came in and finished tucking her in. Those are two completely different narratives. And in every way.
Yep.
I'm trusting the one he gave the morning of. So.
Understandably so. But yeah, so TCF said, Spidey from Behavioral Arts on his community tab said he's looking to talk to someone who has done a deep dive into this story specifically because of some things he has in mind if you would like to reach out to him.
Behavioral arts.
Yes.
I certainly can.
And then
I wouldn't say that we've finished our deep dive, but I'm happy to
we're getting there.
talk about what we know so far.
And then following that, Pluto's Pulsar for $5, or Pulsar, I guess would be the proper terminology, says, thank you for making your videos so that I can cite them in my research papers.
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely go on behavioral arts.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me.
We're going on his channel. We're going. If he wants us, we'll go.
All right, cool.
Let him know. We'll do it. I mean, I've done it, at the very least, I think the deepest dive on the first 48 hours of the case. Kill me. You guys have no idea how late I was up.
Imagine the time, and then add 2 hours.
Yeah. I went to bed at 6 one morning.
Yep. But yeah, Pluto's Pulsar for $5 says, thank you for making your videos so that I can cite them in my research papers. Parentheses, I cited your Wendigo Wichuge video for my Anthrofinal.
Oh, thank you. That's cool.
I was going to say, that's going to make you proud as a historian.
Let me know if you would like anything else, because I'm happy to share. Everything's supposed to be up on Patreon. Again, Aiden and I are just so swamped. I'm just going to level with you guys. If we could get our Patreon and YouTube and everything to $5,000 more than it currently is a month, we can hire an editor and we can really change some stuff.
Yep.
At the very least, it gives him time to do his producer role and actually make sure everything's where it's supposed to be.
We're waiting on starting new shows until I'm able to stop editing as much as I am to be able to then go and film these shows in all the places we want to film them.
The problem is we need to make more money to hire an editor, and we also want that person to be local.
Yes.
At least local enough to be in the office once every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So, we're struggling. We could probably get an editor online for cheap, but we want to find somebody who we can interact with face to face.
There are opportunities in front of us, but we're finding the correct thing that we want to continue the quality at what it is or better is easier said than done.
Yeah, so if you do want to help us with that, you can join this channel. You can become a member over on Patreon. When's the new Liquored Lore featuring Stakuyi coming out?
Supposed to be, I think it's the 18th or the 19th, that Friday that's coming out. I figured it was going to be a nice little treat prior to the Christmas week.
Yep, you get not only Stephen Bell and I arguing about history while rather inebriated, but you also get Celso given a tutorial on how to make the drink we were drinking.
Yes.
Which I think is a pretty cool new addition.
Yep, 100%.
And that's going to be the rest of them from now on.
Following that, NC Squatch is asking, my soul craves the Lore Lodge and the uncensored freedom of Pepperbox. Possible?
We're working on it. One thing that you guys could really help us with is telling us what Pepperbox exclusive content you'd want to see, because we're trying to think of something, but every time we do, it's like a little too similar to something they've already got going on.
Yep.
And it needs to be something that doesn't require me doing the level of research that I do for the normal Lore Lodge videos, because I just don't have time. I mean, Pepperbox, the big thing we want to bring over there, if we get to join, would be some bigger documentaries. Us doing stuff like following the Donner Party trail, going to Granby, Colorado, and interviewing people about Marv Heemeyer, like doing full-scale documentaries.
Yep. Again, things we just need the time to do.
Yeah. So, being able to that stuff for Pepperbox, we could do very much. What we need to pitch to those guys is, hey, here's what we can give you every month. So if you can give us ideas for what you would watch, what would get you to spend that $8, let us know. And we will do our best to make it happen, so we can give a proof of concept. I would love to be able to hand them something this spring.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, next, Elena has given us more PTSD money. Dice.
Gotta start a Lore Lodge PTSD fund people can just Venmo to.
Honestly, yeah. Hysterical Chaos for $10 says, Observe, named Logan, just released a compilation of interviews and evidence he analyzed throughout the years of the Ramseys with extensive details about the case that will fill some of the details that you're missing, apparently.
Ooh, that would be a good thing to watch to prime myself. I think that'd be helpful, yeah. I'm glad there are so many people who are doing good work on this right now. I think, I mean, conspiracy theory here, in my opinion, I think John Ramsey is behind the Netflix documentary.
Oh, was that, I'm sorry, hypothetically, was that not blatantly obvious to everybody?
I think it was, but I think that it was definitely him, in my opinion. And I think the reason was now that so many of the other investigators are just out. They're either old, or they're no longer in police work, or they're so far removed that they're not doing anything with it anymore. And a lot of them just don't have that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that for John, this was an opportunity for him to keep the narrative going in his direction.
In a way that contradicts something that came out about 7 years prior.
Yeah. So in 2016, there was the CBS documentary that really, there are a couple of flaws with it, and I will go through them if I have time. Possibly in a live show, possibly in a recorded. It depends on what I got time for. But like, for example, the idea that she was not sexually assaulted that morning is nonsense, and they presented that as a possibility. They were like, well, that splinter could have gotten in there somehow else. And I was like, there's blood. Like, I'm thinking we know what happened there. But yeah, so the CBS documentary, I think, did a very good job of sort of pointing out all of the misrepresentations from Team Ramsey over the years. The Dr. Phil interview Burke did just made things worse. So, I wouldn't be surprised if this was supposed to happen sooner.
Oh, I think it was. I think this was
probably supposed to happen around the time COVID happened.
Well, yeah, I think this was potentially trying to essentially make up for the Dr. Phil interview and the CBS thing. I think this was probably pitched as early as 2018, if not earlier,
me too,
in an attempt to get this done even before COVID, but,
Yeah. So, and I think that there is some stuff with this. I guess something came out in maybe 2018 with DNA or something, like a new software. But I think that the reason this documentary on Netflix exists is to keep the narrative going in John's direction. The difference between right now and 2016. In 2016, there were podcasts that you listened to on your phone about sports. There are a few true crime things. Podcasting in 2016 was something people did as a hobby in their free time, or as a way to try and maybe, get a concept going for a show. John is 80 years old. I don't think he realized the hornet's nest he was about to kick. Because the true crime girlies, they probably loved, according to TikTok, they loved that documentary. That documentary made the police so bad. You know, you can capitalize on all of the animosity towards the police over the last few years by making them the villains again. What I don't think, if John Ramsey did this on purpose, if this was his intention, was to make this documentary to keep the intruder did it narrative at the forefront, because that's what the documentary does in the end. I don't think he realized that there were going to be people who do this professionally, who aren't doing this in their free time, who this isn't the thing they do after their 9 to 5 to talk about something they're interested in. There are people who dedicate their lives to this. I think he made a major misstep. If, again, that was his intention.
I agree. Duo Black Rose for $5 says, between this case and Peter Furcelli's book, I'm starting to think that the district attorney mess up way more than the cops.
I will say this has opened my eyes to that possibility. I have been very critical of the cops in a number of situations that I've now gone back and thought about, and I'm like, that could have been the DA. But as a cop, you can't really come out and say that. Because if you do, you lose your job and you never get hired ever again. So, I mean, what they did to Steve Thomas after this was brutal. Like, they were really threatening to blackmail the guy.
Yep. Another one from a couple people gave us money for the PTSD fund, but Nate specifically said, how did they determine that the items, the paintbrush, the notepad, the tape, etc., came from inside of the house if the housekeeper also had those same items?
So that's the thing, is it wasn't necessarily the exact same. It was similar. So it was, and we'll this is why I do the recorded one. These ones, as you can probably tell, are more me like doing kind of the investigative work here, because what's great about this show is if I say something and I happen to be wrong, I'd be like, cool, I'll fix that.
Mm-hmm.
The recorded thing, it's a lot more embarrassing.
We might as well just start calling these recitations.
Yeah.
Because it's basically the Friday video is the lecture, and then this is the recitation.
This is Lodge MD.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I need a ball. You have the ball.
I have the ball.
He has the actual ball. I have the cane.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Perfect.
We're ready.
Thank you to the Grand Lodge of Tennessee for my cane. So, where was I? What was I saying? The stuff. Yeah, it wasn't the exact same. And they eventually did do an analysis of the materials, and they found that the duct tape that was in the home did not match the duct tape from Merv Pugh. They also were able to identify the exact nylon cord. And Aiden, you know what's funny about that part?
What's that?
The exact nylon cord that they identified? Well, Steve Thomas and his partner, Ron Gosage, I think it was those two, went through, because the DA would not help them get a warrant for the Ramseys' credit card purchases. Which, again, utterly mind-blowing.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, does it?
Like, I can think of zero reason. First of all, if I'm the Ramseys and I didn't do it, I don't see what the danger is in handing over my credit card details.
There is none.
Like, what could possibly be on there that you're trying to hide? You know, if there is something that, like, you're worried this might make me look bad, if you're like, oh, crap, I bought that nylon cord. The police are going to be far less suspicious if you go to them and you say, hey, just so you know, that nylon cord came from inside our house. Like, I'm not sure why somebody used it, but I recognize that. That is a lot less suspicious than you going, I don't recall. Yeah, sometimes answering the question and cooperating is the right answer, especially if you didn't do it. Because again, in this case, you know, it's one thing I will say, if the Ramseys were worth $7,000, I understand. I understand not wanting to talk to the police and worrying that they're going to be able to prosecute you and you won't be able to afford a good lawyer. The Ramseys had the best lawyers that money could buy. I mean, they were in no danger if they were innocent of telling the cops, yeah, that came from inside our house. Because all that does is prove that the murderer used something from inside the house. You know? It doesn't prove that it was them. And there's other stuff on that cord, like hair, DNA, things like that. There are other things that could be on the cord that are going to be far more implicating. In fact, it's a much stronger claim if you go, hey, that's our nylon cord that they used to kill our daughter. And then they find there's none of your DNA on it. They're going to be like, oh, yeah. I mean, they were pretty forthcoming about that. I'm serious when I say, had the Ramseys gone, if the Ramseys are innocent, had the Ramseys gone and spoken to the police immediately with lawyers present. The police were fine with there being lawyers there. If they had gone, what they weren't fine with was like only having 90 minutes per person and having them in the room at the same time with each other. They were like, no, we're not throwing out every single interrogation rule, every single interview rule to make the two prime suspects in this case more comfortable. So everybody acts like, oh, the police are being unreasonable because the average person in 1997 doesn't know that that's not normal. The Ramseys come out and they're like, yeah, we keep trying to interview with the police and they keep giving us all these weird rules and saying that, you know, we have to be interviewed separately and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because that's how that works. But if you're the general public in 1996, you don't know that necessarily. You might, but... And you can't just look it up. That's the other thing. We all think about this. We've all got supercomputers. For 1996, this is a supercomputer. We have them in our pockets. I can look up in a heartbeat, you know, is this true?
Yeah.
Like,
what is standard operating procedure for police detectives interviewing or interrogating a suspect?
You never interview suspects together. Unless you've already interviewed them separately.
Yeah.
Then you might.
Yeah, because the whole point is you're trying to figure out where the non-linear elements of their stories are so you can determine who is and is not telling the truth.
And for months, the Ramseys are telling the media, we keep trying to cooperate and they keep giving us all sorts of, you know, like weird rules about it. You know, we're trying and they just won't let us. And then the police are like, no, you want things that we don't give people. God, it's so frustrating.
It is. Next one from Vampire from Pluto for 1024 says, bedwetting can be a sign of a kid being too scared to leave their bedroom. Maybe JonBenet was scared of who would find her out of bed / what would happen if caught. Thoughts?
So in this specific case, that's a non-factor because her bathroom was an ensuite. So she did not have to leave her bedroom to get into her bathroom. Another thing bedwetting can be a sign of is abuse, and specifically incest. You don't have to take that from me. You can go look it up because that's where I learned it. Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, FBI. You know what else the FBI says? It's usually the parents. You know what else the FBI said? Man, that evidence sure looks like it was the parents. You know what the CBI said? That sure looks like Patsy's handwriting. One of my favorite things is somebody brought up the deposition of Steve Thomas. And they said there's one point at which Eldon Wood is questioning him. And he goes, you know, you said that Chet Ubowski, the CBI analyst who looked over the handwriting samples, said that 24 out of 26 characters matched Patsy's handwriting. Are you aware that Chet Ubowski has denied saying this and said that they don't even do that? Like, that's not a kind of analysis they do. And Steve Thomas's answer was, okay, well, this is what I was told by the other detectives. I was not aware that Ubowski had said that. Also, if I remember correctly, Ubowski said that in like 2001. It was after the book had come out, if I'm not mistaken. What Ubowski did say, however, was these handwriting samples indicate Patsy was the author. What the Ramsey side clutches to is that he said he was unwilling to take the stand and definitively say this was Patsy Ramsey. It wasn't that he was unwilling to take the stand at all. He was unwilling to take the stand and say that his analysis was that it was Patsy Ramsey. What he was willing to say was that it indicated Patsy could be the author. And that, they've now spun a web where somehow the only actual statement he made, which was these handwriting samples indicate that Patsy could be the author. That's the only thing he actually said. And they latch on to the fact that he was unwilling to testify that it was definitely Patsy. That is so deceptive. And I'm not saying that's the Ramseys necessarily. Because I will say one very real possibility here is that the attorneys the Ramseys thought were a great team might have just been the worst defense attorneys to ever exist. Because if the Ramseys are innocent here, it's the advice of their attorneys that makes them seem so guilty. So, but yeah, I mean, their attorneys being like, well, look at that. See, he wasn't willing to take the stand. Also, basically, I think it was actually legitimately every single, but for the sake of, legal reasons and covering my own ass, it seems like, from what I understand, the only handwriting analysts to say that it excluded John and Patsy, all of them said it excluded John and Burke, by the way. The only ones to say that it didn't, only ones that said it did exclude Patsy were the investigators hired by the Ramsey attorneys. So, police people couldn't exclude Patsy. DA's people couldn't exclude Patsy. CBI's people couldn't exclude Patsy. FBI's people couldn't exclude Patsy. Foster, the guy who analyzed the language in Kaczynski's writings and determined it was in fact Ted Kaczynski, he said it was Patsy. And a lot of people have focused on it. They've been like, oh, well, that's not handwriting analysis. That's linguistics. That's not a hard science. You're right. It might not be considered scientific evidence. But in concert with the handwriting analysis, if you present it and you went, well, linguistically, this matches a profile that fits Patsy.
Well, and also really quickly,
Vassar also looked at the handwriting, by the way.
Well, but also the
not Vassar, Foster. He worked for Vassar College.
Yeah, the linguistics person. How many things had they analyzed, and how many times were they right? How many times were they wrong?
Foster?
Yes.
152-0.
Being right versus wrong. Yeah.
He identified an unknown play or an unknown poem from the 1600s as being written by Shakespeare correctly. He identified the author of the book Primary Colors, even though it was under a pseudonym, by comparing the linguistics in Primary Colors to work by a number of other people and then triangulated which one was the author. It took the guy 6 months to finally admit it.
So just to...
So that's what I mean is, yes, it's not a hard science, but he was never wrong.
Yep.
And in concert with the handwriting analysis, not necessarily the linguistic analysis, but the handwriting analysis, in my opinion, if I'm a juror, it's Patsy. If you bring that to me as a juror, and you say it was written on Patsy's notepad with a pen next to the phone Patsy used to call police that sits next to the memo book that the notepad was, in handwriting that can exclude everyone involved except Patsy, with language that matches the way Patsy writes and talks. And then you tell me there's literally no other suspects for that handwriting. As a juror, that is beyond a reasonable doubt to me. At least that she wrote the note.
And that was going to be my question, was whether or not that was beyond a reasonable doubt for you.
For me, yeah. I have, and that is the real sticking point for me here. Of all the evidence in this case, I firmly believe Patsy wrote that note. In my opinion. Go on.
So we're coming up on 9, so we're going to prioritize here. But one thing that was worth touching on was what Warden Commander Kuslan said for $10, saying, how has the DA never been charged, disbarred, fired, or had anything negative happen to him? It's baffling and really kills any faith in the justice system.
So, in my opinion, I have no evidence of this. Alex Hunter does not appear to have given much indication that he planned to retire in 2000 prior to the grand jury. The grand jury seems to have happened because I think it was Governor Romer, Colorado governor, from what I understand, read him the Riot Act and was like, dude, I don't care what you think. Thomas is cooking us right now. The media is cooking us right now. You need to do this, So he finally calls the grand jury. They vote to indict, and then he, obfuscates the fact that they voted to indict and says that they're not going to proceed. And then he retires. My thinking is that this was probably a situation of, if he retires, they won't charge him. Now, the other thing is, in order to charge him, it would have to be his own people from the office would have to charge him. So my thinking is that he probably dipped, threw his support behind somebody who pledged not to charge him, and then, went from there. But also, it could just be the DA's office was, from what it looks like they were all just like him. So charging him would be charging all of them.
There's two more that I think are worth getting to before we have to wrap things up. One is a good synopsis of a number of questions that are asking about the essay. From the Castman 777 saying, I think we should take the theory that John was providing JonBenet seriously in relation to the fact that she was a beauty queen. His family was associated with North Fox Island, and she had signs of that before she died. I wanted to get your opinion on that.
North Fox, from what I understand, North Fox Island was totally defunct by this time. JonBenet was only 6. I understand the idea that, maybe they went and did something else, but Melinda was adamant that nothing like that happened to her family. And she was younger, or she was older, so she would have been around for a longer period of time here. Could it be Patsy's side? Maybe, but John was the one with the connections. I will look into the North Fox Island thing, but I gotta be honest, I hate it. Not because I hate the concept, I do, but...
For those who aren't familiar, can you describe a little bit about what exactly
North Fox Island is kind of like an Epstein situation. There was a porn ring. I guess there was some evidence of or some proof maybe of involving children. I don't see it. I'm gonna be honest. There's Occam's razor. A lot of more likely explanations here before you get to that. And also, I just don't. I don't see it. I'm going to look into it. I promise. But the abuse signs were more suggestive that it was somebody in the home, not somebody being sold. And also, I think if that were happening, we would have stumbled across some video footage by now. I don't know. It's not that I think it's impossible. I haven't looked too deeply into it, so I can't say for sure. But whenever stuff like that comes up, it tends to derail. Because the parents did it, or something happened in that house and the parents covered it up. That's digestible for the average person. They're going to look at that and they're going, okay, yeah, I can see that. Most of the time when it is a child murdered in the home, it is the family. So yeah, this tracks. This makes sense. They had a lot of money. They had a lot of connections. They could have covered it up. This tracks. The second you bring in elite pedophile rings, you lose a third of the population the moment you say the words elite pedophile ring. The moment you go into more detail, you lose another third. I would much rather people focus on the likely situation and see where it leads than jump to the North Fox Island thing. And a lot of people have been like, oh, well, check out this guy's deep dive. Check out this guy's deep dive. It's really convincing. And I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. But a lot of people told me that there are flat earthers who are convincing. There aren't. So I'm going to look into it. But it is one of those things that a lot of the time people on the pro Ramsey side latch onto it and they're like, see, it's just getting ridiculous at this point. So.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. Couple things. Hi, Mom. She's been talking about things in the chat, particularly how popular pageants were at that time.
Again, weird.
Yeah. And then, so 2 things. One was there were a number of people asking about Burke.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure how much you might want to go into that at this point.
Sure. Well, hit me.
Just generally, like, thoughts on that element of the investigation.
His interviews, all 3 of them, as a 9-year-old, as an 11-year-old, and as I guess he would have been 20-something at the time, all 3 of them make me deeply uncomfortable. As an older brother, all 3 of them actually make me hate him. From the time he was a 9-year-old kid, because I was a 9-year-old with a younger sister once. I don't have to judge him as a 27-year-old. As a 9-year-old, I would have found that odd. If you show me a video of my 9-year-old self acting that way, I would be like, what was wrong with me? Like, did I need therapy? Like, so I think the idea that, Burke's behavior was somehow normal there is people coping. Whether he did it or didn't do it, miming the action of somebody stabbing or clubbing your sister who is dead and has only been dead a week and a half is weird. That's strange. Being asked to draw a picture of your family and drawing everyone but your sister, and then when the child psychologist asks, well, what about JonBenet, saying, well, she's not here anymore, so I didn't draw her. That's not normal behavior. He's like laughing throughout the interviews. I mean, I'll be honest, I think if this happened today, nobody would bat an eye at the idea that it was Burke. But because it happened in 1996, and people were, if we're being honest, a little more naive about the reality of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, they just didn't have the access to information that we do now.
So the idea that a 9-year-old could do that to his sister? No, he's just traumatized.
Now we know a little differently.
The way he was acting lined up with his behavior before she died. He was known to be violent towards her before she died. They were known to antagonize one another before she died. She got all the attention. And he was the afterthought. He was the firstborn of that part of the family. He was the golden boy until JonBenet was born. I don't know. His behavior in those interviews comes across to me as sociopathic. Not autistic, not ADD. Probably that too. But yeah, it very much comes across as something's not right. And there is evidence that Burke may have, on a couple of occasions, smeared feces around JonBenet, like on a box of candy she had received as a present, which to me seems pretty deliberate. That's not a normal thing to do. I will say this much. The fact that JonBenet had all of these bedwetting problems, the fact that her mother and her grandmother insisted she loved the pageant circuit, and yet everyone else who knew them, from what I can see, felt this was really weird, and JonBenet had, on a couple of occasions, said she didn't want to do it anymore. And then the fact that Burke had the issues he had, and that none of the older 3 children did, I think something wasn't right in that house.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Burke is probably a victim of something, at the very least neglect. This strikes me as a parental issue. And granted, given how John's other 3 kids turned out, it strikes me as a Patsy issue. So, I mean, one thing that I think is relevant here is after the morning of, I can't believe it didn't occur to me earlier, but after the morning of, John had to back her up. No matter what. Because if he didn't, he's going to prison too. So it didn't even necessarily have to be about Burke or John. I think it was. I think it's more likely that they were protecting Burke. But I think, the fact that Patsy's friends were apparently like planning to stage an intervention over all of this pageant stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that was in the CBS documentary, remember?
Honestly, no. No, I didn't remember that part.
Yeah, Judith Phillips mentioned it. But it's also in Thomas's book. I think it's in Kohler's book. Like, they thought that this was all getting a little weird with JonBenet. And, I want everybody in the audience to really think about JonBenet Ramsey for a second. What was going on here? Her whole life was pageantry. All of it. She knew nothing else. From the time she was 4 years old, from the time of her earliest memories, she was doing pageants. That was not how Patsy was. Patsy decided she wanted to do it at 13. Patsy got to the Miss America competition and didn't win. Externally, it's not uncommon for children of hard-driving parents to look really successful on the outside and to look like they're loving what they're doing. I think a great example of this recently would be Baby Gronk. Baby Gronk rizzed up Livy Dunn, and now he hates his life. So, I can't believe I just said those words, but when children get into the performance circle, especially with child celebrities, I mean, how many child celebrities turned out normal?
The majority don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's, I think, what we also need to be doing here is thinking about this, even though she wasn't in Hollywood, Patsy treated her like she was in Hollywood. And I think we got to stop thinking about this as, the perfect little suburban family, and start thinking about it more as what it was, which was Patsy living vicariously through her daughter. There is absolutely no way that a 4-year-old could express that all they want to do for the rest of their life is pageantry, and you believe it.
No, 4-year-olds have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
No, and especially when you factor in the fact that there are multiple people who say JonBenet did not want to do this. And that her grandmother and her mother were forcing her. I mean, it reeks to me of an abusive household. And I don't know, maybe John being a CEO and so busy with work didn't know.
I wouldn't be shocked even in the slightest.
It's second marriage, young kids when you're not that young, younger wife. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't know about something.
No, this strikes me as the stereotypical, trophy wife of a businessman who works all the time, doing her side hobby that loses 10 grand a month. Well, it's mostly a joke, but
it's
it
a
happens.
Real thing. Yeah, it does happen. And I mean, you look at it. John's first marriage ended because he cheated on the mother of his children with a secretary, from what I understand. Patsy at one point, I think, claimed to not know about this, even though it happened the year she met him. And then he marries her at first sight, basically. So I'm just, everything stinks, and it makes me angry that this happened 30 years ago instead of today, because today it would be solved.
Yep.
It wouldn't be a question who did this. As I said to you earlier, I think, it's with this specific case, if the DNA can be explained as to why it doesn't match a Ramsey, that's it. It's over. That's the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you explain the DNA, There is literally no reason to believe this was an intruder. If you can't explain the DNA, things get complicated.
Yep.
Because I still wouldn't think it was an intruder that the Ramseys didn't know, and all of them were cleared. So,
in terms of bookending this episode, there's one last thing for $100 that came in from Melancholia von Misery for a case request that is not this case.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all.
Yeah, big thank you.
Very generous.
I'm using my birthday money to ask you, which is already far more than you needed to do. If you haven't already covered the Marshall Iwasa case, please do. He went missing in 2019, but it's an extremely bizarre and frustrating local case here in Canada that involves the wilderness. We could really use your brain on this. Thank you.
How is Marshall Iwasa spelled?
It's going to be regular spelling of Marshall with one L, and then Iwaasa.
So it's a native.
Yes.
Lethbridge, Alberta, who disappeared November 17th, 2019, after accessing his storage locker. His truck was found burned 6 days later on a rural logging road near Pemberton, British Columbia. Pemberton, British Columbia. Why does that sound familiar? Pemberton.
That is... near Narren Falls Provincial Park.
Weird.
It'd be nice if this actually zoomed out when I'm asking it to. It's near Whistler.
Hang on.
Just north of Vancouver.
That might be where the MMIW panel met not long ago. I think it might have been, yeah. Maybe. I might just be misunderstanding. But yeah, so Marshall Iwasa investigation. After discovering his truck, they initiated a search, treating it as missing persons investigation. Then suspended it in December. All right. Determined the cause of the truck to be arson. Bank cards showed no activity. No gas purchases throughout the entire drive. All right, let's see.
I mean, that it could be explained by cash purchases, but that's still unusual, especially in 2019.
Especially if he has a history of making credit card purchases for gasoline.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. I just want to find Oh. Yeah, it was a 14-hour drive away, and it was a 2009 GMC Sierra. That's 3 stops for gas.
Minimum. 2009 GMC Sierra, what's the lowest engine?
Yeah, minimum 3 stops for gas on that one.
Hang on.
That's, that sounds like foul play to me. I'm going to look into it. And I'm not going to find anything because Canada. But I will look into it. That is right up our alley. Happy to do it. And probably soon because we're going to change up the way we do the JonBenet cases, the case videos. It's going to need more than 3 parts. Going to need more than 4 parts. Could need 6. Could need 12.
The base model.
Yeah.
Which is the smallest engine is a...
Let's say 14.
Yeah, 14 city, 18 highway, combined 16 miles per gallon on the base model engine, which was a V6 4.3 liter.
We stopped for gas at least twice driving to Kentucky.
Yeah.
In a 2022 Jeep Wrangler.
Yep. And that
got 20 on the highway.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, no credit card purchases. Yeah, I'll look into that one for sure.
Yep.
Because, if there's one... Aiden, which camera am I on right now?
Middle.
Right. If there's one thing I really love to do on this channel, it is point out how bad the RCMP is at their job.
It's really become a calling card for us.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
The FBI, like, again, the joke about Canada becoming the 51st state, the FBI would be an improvement.
Yep.
The FBI would be an improvement. I will give the FBI credit. They do pretty well with kidnapping cases.
Yeah.
At least more recently, a certain McCullough fella back in the 70s did not get the treatment he should have. But looking back on it, after the conversation we had with Nick, I do think it was probably an accident.
Yeah, that makes the most sense.
But it was kind of ridiculous. They refused to investigate.
Well, how old was he?
19.
Yeah, so...
Oh, well, it was totally that. They were like, he's 19. It's the 70s. He's probably shacking up with some girl.
Yep.
So, but anyway, part 3 comes out next Friday.
Yep.
This Friday, you're getting... What are they getting this Friday?
Ape Canyon.
Ape Canyon. No. Not Ape Canyon. Has to do with Ape Canyon. Ape Canyon gets mentioned.
Fair.
It's a classic Mr. Ballin tale that we did some analysis on.
Right. Ape Canyon exists within the story, but is not the main story.
The question I would ask you who are watching right now is, do you know how to get to Bell's Canyon?
Yes.
And with that, yeah. If I got anything wrong, please comment it. I'm 100% serious, by the way. If I got something wrong in this video and you've got evidence of how I got it wrong, please tell me, because that's... I don't want to put John and Burke Ramsey in prison. I want to find out who did this. Right now, I think it was them. But if it wasn't them, I'd like to present the evidence. I know right now it probably sounds a lot like, I can't be swayed. I could be swayed. This book is definitely not helping.
Shocker.
But I am fully willing to change my mind if the evidence is presented. So if you have something that proves something I said tonight was wrong, please share it with me in the comments. Post it. Probably the most direct thing you could do is post it to our Reddit, r/the Lore Lodge, or in our Discord, which is bit.ly/join the lodge. If you pop it into the tip line, there is a JonBenet Ramsey thread.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, well, everybody, thank you so much for being here. To all who donated, thank you very much. Your donations help keep the show moving.
More than you know.
Yeah, and with the last few episodes being as high performing as they have been, might actually help us get closer to hiring that editor.
I could not be more excited.
Oh, I'm sure. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm hoping that we can get to the bottom of this, or at the very least, we can create the most comprehensive, factually accurate, and least misleading documentary on JonBenet Ramsey ever made.
That's the goal. That's the goal with anything we research. Well, he researches, we produce.
You've helped.
I bounce ideas.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Monday.
on Friday and next Monday.
Yeah, well, we won't see them. They'll see us.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll see us on Friday, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye, guys.